Hello Ridgemont teachers, this is Dustin Scott, and I just wanted to show you all another resource that we can use called Chartdog Graphing. This is a tool that we'll use to progress monitor our interventions that we do when we're using RTI. So how you get to this is you go to interventioncentral.org and create an account. It's a free account, it doesn't require very much information at all, but the reason you have to create an account is when you go to save your graph, it saves it to your account. So once you have created an account at Intervention Central, you can go up here to where it says My Stuff and click on that. And then you have an option here called Chartdog Graph Maker. You also see here at the top that you view 60 or 0 out of 60 documents. So with this free trial, they allow you to have up to 60 documents, which should be perfect for us because we don't have that many RTI kids in each grade for each teacher. So click on Chartdog Graph Maker, and that will pull up the resource. So here we have the graph. Now you'll see if you hit this plus button, you can drop down some instructions. These instructions are not super helpful. They're a little confusing, and they even say in here, because this application is newly released, we are still in the process of writing up detailed instructions. But I went ahead and figured this out, and so we don't need to worry about these instructions. So I'll just minimize that. So the first thing you want to do is name your chart, name your graph. So if you just click this, where it says My Chart, and then you just scroll down and add a name. So I'll just put in Student 1. Maybe put RTI. And save. So then we've got our name for it. Now we might want to set up our chart and what the axes should be in this. So if you just go down here to where it says Chart Options, it now will allow you to label your axes. So this y-axis over here, I'm just going to put score, and then the bottom we'll put date, because that's pretty much how it's set up. And then scroll down and click Save, and then it updates. We got score over here, date over here. Now how this works is you set up phases within this chart. Now a phase is kind of like what we'll probably do at Ridgemont is use 9 weeks or quarters. So a phase would be, once we create it, it'll put a line right here, and then these set of dates will be phase 1, or maybe first 9 weeks. And then the next set of dates will be phase 2, or maybe second 9 weeks. However we end up setting it up. So that's all phases are. They're not that confusing. We could go through here, and I'll go ahead and set up a couple phases to show the end of the second grading period, the third grading period, and then the last day of school. Okay, so what I did was I went ahead and just created the third grading period and the fourth 9 weeks. Because by the time everyone sees this video, we'll be done with the second 9 weeks. So you can see here on the graph that January 25th, 2017 is pretty much where our third grading period will start, because that's the day that the second one ends. And then that will go until the 24th of March. That's where it will end. So that's our phase here, third grading period. And then fourth 9 weeks will go from that date on until the last day of school. So now we've already got our chart organized here with these two things. In order to add a new phase, if anybody was wondering, just create a new phase, and then it brings this up. You can name the phase, and then you can put your dates in here. So now let's move on to the next part where we add our data. So down here, this looks really confusing, but it's actually quite simple. So these are where we're going to enter our data in. So let's start with this first one. Let's go ahead and click on this pencil to edit it, and we'll name it. Let's go with Fry Sight Words, because that's one that's used quite a bit. This is the data we're tracking. You can put comments in here. You can change the color of the line. You can pick the shape of the points that are going to be on there, but we'll just keep all that standard for now. So in order to add some data, all you do is click Create New Entry, put in the value. So we'll say 50, and the date, we'll just keep it at the beginning there, and then you can put comments in here if you'd like, and click Save. There we go. We got 1 point on our graph. So now, let's put another one on here. It automatically does the next day, but I think I'd like to go about a week later, because that makes our graph look a little better. So we'll do that, and let's say they got up to 60 this time. Click Save. Alright, and then let's create one more. Again, we'll try to do another week later. And we'll say 55. Alright, so now we've got 3 points plotted on here. So this gives us what we would like to do is gather a baseline data for starters. So whenever you're implementing this and you're gathering data, before you do your intervention, gather some data, at least 3 points, at least 3 separate times of data to give us a baseline of where the student is at before we use the intervention. And then after that, after you implement the intervention, you just keep recording the data, preferably once a week. That way it'll keep these properly spaced out through here. So I'll go ahead and add some more data on here, and then we'll talk about the aim line. Okay, so I've added some more data to our table here, just by clicking on here and adding them through here. And you can see it looks like our students doing pretty well. They're improving. But we need to show a line. We need to show a line that gives us a goal for what we want the student to work towards. So how we do this is we take our baseline data, which is typically these first 3 points before you implemented the intervention, and then we're going to create a line that goes from this middle point, and it's going to stretch out to our goal, where we want the student to be at the end of the 9 weeks or at the end of the year. So how we do that is quite simple. Go down here to aims, create custom aim. So what we're doing here is we're creating an aim line. So we'll just call this aim line 1. We'll say the start value is, this middle point is 60, because that's where we want it to start. So we'll do 60 as a start value. And then the end value, we want their goal to be 100. We want to reach those first 100 sight words. And then you can choose which phase to keep it in. For now, we'll just keep it in all phases, because it'll probably be the same. And then as well for this one, you can pick different colors. That way it'll make our aim line a little easier to see. We'll just stick with black for now. Click Save, and then when we scroll up here, you can see they created an aim line for us. So that line starts at 60, and it runs up to our goal, which is at 100. Now what's cool about that and how we track this data is that we can now look at these points and determine, are they on track? Are they on track for where we want them to be? So these points are below the aim line, so that means we need to get it a little bit better, but now the student's starting to improve. And as long as we can kind of stick to this line, we can reach our goal by the end of the year. So that's the purpose of the aim line. Okay, so our next step, after we've created our graph, we have some data that we want to submit to our principal to kind of show her where we're at with our RTI. So how do we submit this? How do we print this? It's actually very simple and pretty self-explanatory. If we scroll down, we have a couple more sections. We have data analysis, which we're not going to worry about that. This is all stuff that's kind of above what we need to do. No need to worry about that. But then we'll go down here to print reports. And we have report options. We can click on that and pick the things we want to include in our report. So do we want to keep the chart? Yeah, the data table, comments, all these. I just keep them all checked because it's good to have, the comments especially. Click Save, and then PDF report. And this will generate it as a PDF. Okay, and here we go. We have our PDF report. So this shows the graph, and then down here we have the actual data, the logs. And then over here it'll have the comments. And like I mentioned before, I like the comments because every once in a while when you're tracking data, a student might just have a really bad day, like maybe here where they just slump down to get a low score. A lot of times that could just be a student having a rough day. Maybe they didn't get sleep the night before, or maybe, I don't know, some trouble at home or anything like that. So it's always good to record in the comments if you notice, like, you had a low score, and you just write in there, had a bad day, or something like that. It'll explain some of the data that we're seeing. But then you have everything here, and then you can choose to either print it or save it to submit it. Now, one more thing I would like to mention that's quite important is that you have to click Save Document in order to save this. I don't believe it has an auto-saving feature of any kind at all. So maybe periodically as you're entering data, go up here and click Save Document. And then if you want to come back to it later, you just go to interventioncentral.org, and then once you logged in, you go up here and click My Stuff. And then here you go. You've used one of 60 documents, and here's our student we just created. So hopefully this tutorial was helpful for everybody. If there's any questions at all, feel free to email me. I'd love to help everybody out. I also will be at some point offering some training sessions at Ridgemont, maybe before or after school, for teachers who might need more hands-on help. So thank you, and I'll see you around school.